Watch this.
Idaho's budget isn't balancing. One side says we cut too many taxes. The other side says, no, we just haven't cut enough fat. So are we broke? We're just bad at math.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
One of those cuts is coming in the form of paying for medical services. And when you cut those, well, hospitals have to make cuts also, which could mean losing access to crucial services. When the lifts at Bogus Basin stop spinning, somebody's got to fire up the snowmobile and fix it. And one of those somebodies is the first woman ever on the maintenance crew. And she's getting some national attention. It's the one thing Idaho lawmakers are constitutionally obligated to do during the legislative session: balance the budget. They can't leave until they do it. Yet here we are, 4 months after they called it a session, and Idaho is dealing with an unbalanced projected budget shortfall. It was reported last week, but now we're getting some reaction to that. And as you can imagine, Democrats and Republicans have vastly different takes on the concept that Idaho could be short by close to $80 million, only a month into the new fiscal year. So is it a time to panic, or is this just a situation that will work itself out? Here's Joe Paris.
A projected budget shortfall for the state of Idaho is getting drastically different reactions.
I wish I could say I was surprised. It's pretty shocking and it's pretty frustrating.
Senate Minority Leader Melissa Wintrow has consistently spoken out about the fate of Idaho's fiscal year 2026 budget.
This could have been easily avoided by really just incorporating well-reasoned, balanced, and common sense approaches to budget. And instead of manufacturing numbers, just look at what are the real numbers, respect the projections that come from the Tax Commission. I think the Tax Commission projected a 1% growth increase, and the legislature used 6.8. Since when do we not listen to the Tax Commission, who was doing this all the time?
A new report from the Nonpartisan Legislative Services Office shows Idaho's budget for the fiscal year is projected to be running short by about $80 million. Wintrow attributes the projected shortage to $450 million in tax cuts and credits for education spending for families wanting to go outside the public school system.
The most simple thing to do right now would be to call a special session and to draw back the voucher scheme. I mean, that's $50 million going into the pockets of folks to pay for their kids' private education or religious school. There are so many people against that. I can't believe it passed. We should just repeal that right away.
My initial reaction was not panic. I think it's important for people to remember that this is based on a forecast, not actual revenue.
Diametrically opposed in the opinion category are Republicans who believe lawmakers hit the mark, but should always keep an eye on changing economic trends. The budget report reflects recent action from Governor Little. To address the projected shortfall, he issued an executive order directing a 3% general fund budget holdback across executive branch agencies minus public school support. The report says, quote, if implemented by all state agencies, this would reduce spending by $86.1 million. That would put Idaho in the green, so to speak, plus $6 million.
I thought it was a smart preventative move because we're not sure. And the trend is down slightly in sales tax, up in income tax, though, despite a large income tax cut. I thought it was a smart preventative move. It's a temporary move and it will be determined by the legislature in January whether to make that permanent, to reduce it, to increase it. And again, we'll do that on the best available data at the time in January.
Critics like Wintrow believe lawmakers need to adjust the tax cuts and eliminate the school choice tax credit. Representative Wendy Horman, co-chair of Idaho's budgeting committee, disagrees.
I agree. There's a lot of fear-mongering and finger-pointing going on. Democrats tend to look to those sorts of things you just explained. Oh, we cut too much in taxes and school choice. We shouldn't have been doing that. But Republicans tend to look on the other side of this is the people's money, and we should always return as much to them as possible.
Governor Little signed the tax cuts and tax credit at the end of the session, despite making comments earlier in the year about budgeting concerns. Wintrow believes Idaho's top leader needs to take responsibility.
Late February, when all this $400 million comes out, he says, hey, I don't advise that. If I would put it in my budget. Then a week or two later, he's signing the bills. Here come all the tax cut bills. I think at the end of session he did a press conference he was really excited about, but now he's starting to backpedal again. So I just wish we could get a straight answer here, and I wish I wish that he would take a little more leadership. I wish he would have vetoed that bill, quite frankly.
But Representative Horman points to Idahoans in need as a key factor in supporting tax cuts.
We need to do everything possible to give them their money back so they can provide for their families.
The projected deficit is just that, an estimate of what the end of the fiscal year could look like. Between now and next summer, numbers could improve, go south, or stay consistent. In the case that it does get to a dire situation, Idaho does have $1 billion in rainy day funds that could be used to bail out the budget.
Well, it's been a manufactured rainy day. We've been doing cloud seeding on this one. We didn't need to be in this crisis that we're in, but we might have to dip into those funds. I doubt my colleagues will have the wherewithal to do it, but they created this problem, and it is a monsoon, just like it is in Boise today. It is a monsoon in our state. There are people panicked, and there are folks that are really struggling to figure out how this is going to go.
It's not raining right now. Our economy is still strong, our unemployment's low, and so we'll monitor economic conditions throughout the fall, see where we are in January, and make determinations if it's time to pull them out or if it's time to cut additional spending. And that will be a debate. I expect that to be a hot debate.
So as you heard Senator Wintrow say, she believes that a special session in the short term would be the best way to address and fix the budget situation. I have asked around on this across both political parties. The Republican-controlled state capitol, none of the leadership there really seemed to be considering that as a serious thing. Brian, lawmakers, the Republican lawmakers I've spoken with, including Representative Horman, believe in January this will be a full conversation, and it can wait till then.
It can wait till then, according. Okay. I think it's been pretty difficult, as we pointed out, for Governor Little to run away from the statement. If I would have thought we could do $450 million, I would have proposed $450 million, which he did propose $100 million in his State of the State address. Have you heard from the governor's office about this?
Have not heard from the governor's office on this, and we have reached out previously and tried to ask about this during the session last year as well. What other thing that they are looking at in terms of lawmakers is the federal reconciliation bill, the big, beautiful bill from the Trump administration. There will be impacts to the state of Idaho. However, some of the numbers and some of the final calculations are not in yet. However, there will be a projected impact to Idaho. At this point, how much money or lack thereof will show up, we will find out.
That's the factor. And yeah, speaking of that, and you know what, those aren't the only cuts being considered across Idaho. That big, beautiful bill you just mentioned is one of them. Last week, the Department of Health and Welfare sent a memo to doctors who treat Medicaid patients. What the state pays you to cover those costs will be reduced by 4%. The memo says it's because of the state's Medicaid budget is now projected to balloon more than double what was thought it was going to do during the legislative session when the health and welfare budget was set. At the time, the Division of Financial Management thought the growth would be about 8%. They are learning now it's more like 19%. So the DHW is making a course correction before things get too far down the road. Now, Medicaid is mostly paid for by the federal government, but the state of Idaho kicks in about a third for traditional Medicaid coverage and about a tenth for Medicaid expansion. For some perspective on that, that would be about $3.4 billion from the feds and a skosh shy of $1 billion from Idaho. The increase in the budget projection, according to the Idaho Hospital Association, is due to more people going to the doctor, both because our population has increased and need. Going to the doctor is a good thing. A lot of them, though, are using Medicaid to pay for it. But now Medicaid providers are being told to expect a 4% cut to that reimbursement. It's worth pointing out, despite the bold type in the memo that was sent out saying these cuts are coming September 1st, it still has to go through a public comment period and also get the final approval from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And when we asked DHW today, what happens if it's not approved and these rate adjustments are not implemented? We were told, quote, service cuts would be needed, to stay within our budget. A follow-up question of what do you mean by service cuts? Well, that went unanswered. But we did get some questions answered by the Idaho Hospital Association, who represents 53 hospitals across the Gem State, from the small Cascade Medical Center to the entire St. Luke's Health System. And they told us today, while they appreciate action being taken now before the situation gets worse and those cuts have to possibly go deeper, absorbing a 4% cut, that won't be easy.
Our hospitals are going to have to make tough decisions, and some of them are going to be able to deal with a 4% decrease easier than others. And I think it will be most difficult for our small rural hospitals.
In what way?
Some of our hospitals, right now, about 50% of our hospitals are operating at a less than 1% margin. Some of them are operating in a negative margin right now. So every percentage counts, every percentage point. So suddenly reducing Medicaid reimbursement by 4% will have an impact.
I mean, are we looking at staffing cuts? Are we looking at services being cut?
Staffing cuts are always the last thing you look at because those are the folks that provide care. And we struggle in Idaho to keep healthcare workforce. We're already kind of understaffed in many areas. So staffing rates, that would be probably last on the list, but they'll have to look at services as well. I think right now the most vulnerable places you'll see as far as potential service line cuts are labor and delivery services and behavioral health services. Those are areas that already operate at a negative margin in most cases, and hospitals continue to provide those services because the community needs those services. But if they have to continue providing those services at a loss, and now the loss is going to be 4% greater, they're going to be faced with some tough decisions.
If that isn't implemented, or if it isn't approved and these changes, this rate change isn't implemented, I was told services would have to be cut. Do you have any idea what that would be?
Well, I don't want to speculate what they have in mind, but the services that can be cut are what are considered optional services. On the optional services list are things like vision, dental services, physical therapy, some prescription coverage, occupational therapy.
I guess bottom line is, given this memo and this 4% cut, how big of an impact will this have?
I don't know that this 4% cut is going to be the most impactful thing. We have so many things coming down the line right now. We have a bill from Congress that just passed that is going to have an impact on Idaho. We have insurance premiums increasing, which is going to have an impact on Idaho. We have approximately 75,000 Idahoans who are going to move in to the ranks of uninsured because of the bill that passed in Congress. So it's not that this 4% cut is going to close hospitals or cut services, but the combination of things, is becoming more and more difficult to absorb.
Just one more thing, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, death by 1,000 cuts, as they say.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know how much more, particularly our small hospitals, can take. I don't know where the tipping point is going to be. This is a Medicaid budget issue. But if hospitals close services, they don't just close for Medicaid patients. They close for all patients.
And this may not be the end to the medical care cuts coming our way. Earlier this month, it was reported House Republicans are considering another reconciliation bill in Congress that could claw back money already allocated. Again, Tony told us today it could include cuts to Medicare, not just Medicaid, but Medicare. We got a similar sentiment from the Idaho Medical Association today, similar to what the Idaho Hospital Association told us. They reiterated some doctors are already at a tipping point and could be forced to cut hours or staff. And if this happens, Idaho Medicaid patients will face an access to care crisis, according to Susie Keller. So how close to a tipping point are we? Well, the Idaho Medical Association told us there's an industry standard, a recommendation that hospitals have enough cash on hand to cover 200 days in case they have to weather a crisis. Of the 53 hospitals they represent, one of their hospitals had less than 2 days cash on hand. 3 or 4 had less than 30 days. And 11 hospitals of the 53 didn't have enough cash to get them through 100 days. By the way, the public comment period on this 4% Medicaid cut, that's open right now, this week. And you could add your 2 cents at the email that is on your screen. That's mcpt@idhw.idaho.gov, which we will include that website in this story at ktvb.com. You know, a day or night spent skiing can really get derailed by getting stuck on a stalled ski lift. If you've skied up at Bogus Basin, you know that's a rare thing. And when a lift does stop, though, it's usually user error, somebody getting stuck getting off, right, or falling down. Mechanical issues, well, those aren't usually a thing at Bogus, thanks to their lift mechanics. And one of them just made history as the first from Bogus to be honored for her skills in helping you get on the slopes. Here's Aspen Shumpert with her story.
Here's chair 6.
Yeah, one part per lift.
The colorful building behind Bogus Basin's main lodge is home to the mountain's mechanics and maintenance crew. A small team who work year-round ensuring every lift on the mountain is working properly.
If you're in the winter and the lift stops, we're the ones that come on the snowmobiles and fix it for you.
And summertime brings intense maintenance projects. Maddie Baldwin is one of the 8 members on the maintenance team, but the job was never really part of her plan.
I decided to work at Bogus. I was right out of college and I just knew I wanted to ski. And so I came up here and I thought I was just gonna work one season.
But instead, she became curious about the team of mechanics.
Talking to all of them, kind of figuring out what their job was. And I was like, okay, this could be something I want to do.
Now, 3 years on the maintenance team,
The biggest thing is just learning something new every day. I feel like I started with nothing. I was a lifty. I didn't know a lot about chair lifts or anything mechanical. And looking back, like when I started to now, I think I've learned so much and I have so much still to learn.
she's the youngest at the age of 23 and the first female to ever join the team.
I think being the only female on the team shows that it's definitely possible for women to do this. And I really like when I have female lift operators come in and they ask me, like, how do I do this, or what's your job like? And I love being able to describe it to them and like giving them this like hope that like, yeah, you can do this.
Her team recognized her dedication and desire to jump in on anything, which is why they nominated her for the 2025 Rise Up Challenge by the Ski Area Management magazine.
The challenge is basically young lift mechanics from the US being shown in a spotlight, pretty much. Like, hey, we want more young people in this industry, like, let's spotlight a few of them, get their stories out.
The magazine named 5 finalists across the country, then named Baldwin as the Rise Up Challenge winner earlier this month.
I think the biggest thing was when they met me that I just could pick up and learn so quickly. I think that would be my biggest skill.
So that's the only part that touches the axle.
She's also the first person at Bogus to ever receive the award.
I felt so honored. I was up against amazing lift mechanics from everywhere else.
The job is hard and sometimes dirty, but Baldwin says she wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
It's so cool to see our lift spinning and see all the people come up and go crazy on all of our trails. I love watching it.
Additionally, the winner of the Rise Up Challenge is awarded a $3,500 educational grant. Maddie Baldwin says she's going to use that money to take online courses in electrical work, specifically to help improve her ability to diagnose electrical issues, which she says is the most challenging part of her job. Reporting at Bogus Basin, I'm Aspen Shumpert, Idaho's News, Channel 7.
Now we have more containment of the rock fire burning near Donnelly as crews get a little help from Mother Nature. But all that rain falling to the ground also meant the hot air balloons couldn't get into the sky at the Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic. Here's Richard Rodriguez with today's 411.
A section of Highway 21 is closed due to a mudslide. The Idaho Transportation Department closed the highway in both directions from Grand Jean Road to Banner Summit. ITD says the closure will last at least 2 days. Check Idaho 511 for the latest updates. Firefighters are making progress on the rock fire burning southwest of Donnelly right now. Officials say the fire is now 42% contained. Nearly 880 people are fighting the fire, which is burning about 2,800 acres in timber and brush in the forest. Thankfully, no structures have burned. The sheriff's office has cleared evacuation notices and downgraded Area 7 to Level 1 Get Ready evacuation order. A flash flood watch is in effect today, with fire officials expecting rain throughout the day. Lightning sparked the fire earlier this month. Meanwhile, a little further north, the Island Creek fire burning near Elk City keeps growing. It's now burning more than 11,500 acres. The fire is burning in Nez Perce Clearwater National Forest, and it's still just 5% contained. Today was supposed to be the first day of the annual Spirit of Boise, where hot air balloons take flight from Air Morrison Park, but heavy rain conditions meant the balloons stayed on the ground and the day's events were canceled. Officials say they're optimistic about tomorrow. The Boise State Broncos kick off their season on the road against South Florida Bulls tomorrow. To get a look at everything you need to know ahead of kickoff, like where to watch and who to look out for, text BSU to the number on your screen. That's 208-321-5614, and we'll send you a link to that article directly to your phone. That's the 411 on the 208. I'm Richard Rodriguez.
All right, a lot of comments today about Idaho's unbalanced budget. Let's start with this one from Steve. Our GOP legislators cut taxes last session for 2 reasons: to make sure they get reelected in November 2026, and so Idaho's people have extra cash to pay for Trump's high tariff products over the next year. If the economy is so strong, how come homegrown Idaho kids can't buy a house, Kelly wants to know, or afford health insurance or daycare? The Republican mantra: everything is great. As an independent voter who has no voice in this state, that's from Julie in Boise, the budget shortfall and Medicaid situation are sad. Funny thing is, the Republicans continue to hurt their own base, so let's just hope they wake up, she says. And there's pleas to Governor Little as well. Make no mistake, the Republicans made this budget mess, not Democrats. Governor Little could have stopped this, but caved into the voucher crowd, says Jack in Boise. And a lot of people saying, wait till that starts to be implemented and you'll really see budgets start to go out of whack. As a lifelong Republican, I'm embarrassed to the fiscal incompetence shown by our GOP legislators and governor. They're pursuing individual agendas, not making smart decisions. It really irks me when the Democrats are the smart ones in the room, says Dale. Governor Little used to be so proud we had a budget surplus every year. Now he's not standing up. And this one: will legislators' pay be cut by 3%? They did approve or allow to go into effect a 25% pay increase this past session. So far, that really hasn't been touched. We'll see you tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.